Alrighty, guys, welcome back into the start of something pretty big. We watched the very first movie of the MCU Infinity Saga, Iron Man. And last episode, we ranked all the Marvel movies before we watched them. And we're going to go back and do that at the end of watching them because we're going through them all. So go give that a listen if you haven't. So let's just jump right into whatever it's called. What movie was it? Iron Man? Yeah, that's what the movie's called. So... figured the ranking here. What we'd do is we'd review our list that we did, and for phase one, and also the whole, ranking that we gave it. Because looking at it here, like Iron Man for me was number 10 in the whole saga, and then if this will load here, and then in the phase, I gave it number 2. So after watching Iron Man, his first movie, I don't think it's moving anywhere. I don't have a reason to move it up or down. My feelings about it are what I remember.
Pretty stationary.
So that's my rating of it, staying the same as far as for right now.
My rating for Iron Man overall was number 7, and I had it at the top of the list for phase 1. And I think why was because it's just the beginning of everything, so I felt like that deserved it. Just because of it was the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on my rankings, I have Iron Man at number 12. And then for phase 1, I had it same as Cade at number 1. Just because I think it just really introduced and portrayed the character of Tony like perfect. Yeah. Kind of realized he's kind of like a douche, but like he's a cool superhero, and he's just starting everything off. So yeah, I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. So, like you say, let's just jump into our 2 cents of it, shall we?
All right. Who's ready to go first?
I will. All right. Give me 2 minutes. All right. So, what do I think about this movie? I love this movie. Like everyone, like both of the others have said, definitely starts off the MCU in a really good way. Like sometimes I forget how good of this movie is, just like as a standalone movie, but also like the impressiveness of like how much, like you can tell that they began this whole thing with the idea of having it all connect, or maybe they just connected it really well to Iron Man 1 after the fact, but it just works well together. But just as like a standalone origin story, it's pretty good. I will say, maybe this is not a popular opinion, but sometimes in my head it's a lot better than it actually is. Like, well, not better, it's a lot more packed, maybe. Because like Iron Man or not Iron Man, Infinity War, Endgame, or any of the other Marvel movies, like that's like a packed movie. Like a lot of stuff happens in one movie, and sometimes I forget this movie is not that way, which isn't a bad thing. So sometimes I just forget like how simple the story is, but that's totally an advantage in this case, which I really enjoyed. I also like how simple the Iron Man suit is. Like when he goes to fight those bad guys in what's the city that he goes to? The village. Oh, I don't remember, but anyway, and like you can hear the sound from his suit. It's like, it's just cool to hear like how simple it is. It's also interesting to see like watching like Endgame or the other movies when Tony has like more of a heart. I mean, he's still a sarcastic, quippy person, but he's like very much like a very, very nice person. But in this movie, he's just like totally full of himself and honestly kind of annoying sometimes. And like not annoying, but like he's kind of rude. Like he's a jerk. He's not a good guy. He's not. And so it's interesting to see like, because so often I think about like the end of his arc. It's interesting to go back now and compare it to the beginning.
All right, 6 seconds to spare. Nice.
All right, I'll start into my 2 cents. Well, from the other podcast I mentioned, but I'm gonna reiterate now. I love Iron Man. He is my favorite. Like, well, I wouldn't say he's my favorite Avenger, but he's one of them. But I just like him so much more than Captain America. Like, so much more. And part of it is because, like, I think with the whole idea of a superhero, we all think that they're going to have a great, like, strong moral code, and they're always going to do the right thing and kind of, like, stick to a certain stereotype of what a superhero has to do or be. And Tony Stark is, like, the complete opposite, you know? He's, like, selfish. He's just kind of sarcastic. It only, like, does what he wants. And, like, he doesn't care about like the whole just idea of being like a superhero, like especially at the end when they want him to have like an alibi and say he's not Iron Man. He just sits there and is just like, screw it, I'm Iron Man. And I just think that totally like sums up his character, and it just makes it like, I don't know, it just seems more realistic because, you know, if someone was really had that kind of money and like technology and power, like, you know, they're not always going to be like, I gotta save the world and do what's best for everyone else kind of thing. So I don't know. I think that's one of the reasons why I like Iron Man. But this movie was sweet. I just love the whole like idea of Tony Stark like kind of realizing, kind of like not his purpose, but kind of the consequences of his actions. Not like 100% because he's still like him, you know, but especially with like his change of being able to like help the world and make it like a better place. It lies in the fact that he was selling like weapons, like deadly weapons, you know, to a lot of people, and it was actually used for wrong things, and so like he had to kind of shut that down and fight to change a lot of things. So I just love that kind of like change in him as he realizes he could do a lot better.
Pretty good though. Okay, well, thinking about this movie, we watched it. How long ago? Has it been 2 days ago?
3 days ago?
Kind of a few days ago. So it's kind of a little cloudy of what I remembered, but listening to you guys and giving your couple of cents, I had this realization that in the beginning, Tony Stark he thought that he knew who his enemies were. He thought it was just he was trying to protect America with all these weapons so they'd be able to stay safe. But in realization that he was helping his enemies and that his true people he had to fight against was his business partner. And, you know, as his story goes forward, you know, after Tony Stark, after the Iron Man movies, is that there's all these enemies that he's not aware about, and so it's just basically him just finding out who is he really up against, because there's his business partner, what's his name again? Obadiah, which is like a business dope villain name. So it's like Obi. So like there's that, and then he thinks it's Captain America because of Captain America Civil War, and then he realizes it's Thanos. That's the bad guy, and that it's just him progression of like, where do I need to direct my complete and full attention, because he has the potential to become this great superhero, which at the end of all this, that becomes true. But in the beginning of it, you see that he has a ways to go. He's behind. He needs to have some work to do in becoming a superhero. That they give him an alibi at the very end, is that he's going to read it, and then he changes his mind and he says, I am Iron Man, because he loves the attention. But showing that scene of him expressing that shows that he just has so much potential, but he doesn't realize it yet. That's what I got out of that movie.
Yeah. So like Kate said, we watched this a few days ago, so it's pretty hard. I mean, normally after we talk about our 2 cents, we jump into like Easter eggs or fun things we just noticed in it, and it's hard to remember any.
Yeah, a couple days really, you forget little small details.
Yeah, normally when we record our podcast, we're like, hey, instead of doing Iron Man, let's rank all the movies. And they're like, oh, we'll just do Iron Man on Saturday when we get together. And I was like, oh, yeah, no big. I'll remember it. Now I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah,
especially because I've watched so many
Easter
movies
eggs
since
now,
then.
right?
Yeah, I don't remember any Easter eggs.
I have one that I thought was pretty cool. Like, right from the get-go, before you even meet Tony Stark, it does that whole intro thing with his dad, Howard Stark, and how, like, what he did for, like, America and, like, changed the tide of the war and, like, really just helped, like, the military division, technology, and everything. So we get to know kind of the role that his dad had in, like, terms of, like, being, like, a superhero or whatever before we even met Tony. And I think it sets up the whole arc that isn't resolved until Endgame on how Tony realized, like, he's constantly, almost constantly, like, living under his dad's shadow. His dad did so much, and, you know, people are wondering, like, oh, is he the same? And the movie Iron Man introduces that in the beginning when he accepts the award, and, like, that whole intro about Tony Stark and, like, his history and whatever. But I thought it was really cool on how it introduced that arc, and Marvel was able to carry that through all the way until, like, the last part of the Infinity Saga. But Yeah, I think that plays a critical role in like Tony Stark's like life, and at least being like Iron Man, trying to kind of like live up to his father's role, and kind of like be his own man.
Yeah.
I think.
A lot of self-development.
Yeah. There's a question I remember this vaguely. Tony Stark mentions that he wants to ask his dad a couple of questions because his dad passed away really early in his childhood or when he was young. He wanted to ask him like if he had any doubts or if he knew what to do all the time. Because I think it was when he was Obadiah and he wanted to change. I think it was that press conference when he came straight back. Because he wanted to change things, and he has this realization like I want to just shut down this weapons, company and start somewhere else and stuff. And that question he had, like he wanted to ask if his father always knew always knew what to do, but that question is never answered until like Avengers Endgame, where spoiler, he meets his dad back in time. And actually asked that question, is that there's the story, his original answer or questions is set up in this movie, which I didn't even realize when I first watched this movie. I just thought it was just an awesome movie with an awesome story. But like there's just all these questions and little hints to where all of that is resolved and just tied together in this beautiful little bow that just makes Tony's stories amazing. But it's hard to remember all these Easter eggs.
The one I remember is I don't know if you want to call this an Easter egg, but I think it's great that Jon Favreau cast himself as Happy Hogan. Like the director of this movie, of the very first MCU movie, like gave him some like schmuck role that he was gonna play for 10 years, all the way to Spider-Man: Far From Home, which I think is kind of funny. It's also really interesting to like go back and watch these now and see like how young everybody looks.
They look so young.
Or like how different the characters are.
Yeah, and another cool thing about this movie is like the music really like, I don't know, it just really played a big part in just like the idea of like Tony and just, I don't know, it just made me think of like America, just like good old
almost
rock
like
and
his
roll
irreverence.
Huh?
Almost like the constant irreverence he has. It's great.
It's a great movie. It was awesome.
Okay, the one part where he gets back from being held captive for 3 months. Is it 3 months or something like that? He's like, all right, I want a cheeseburger. I want to hold a press conference. And it's like, here, knowing what's going to happen, him ask for a cheeseburger, it's like, oh, man. Like,
yeah, what happened?
I still feel that sorrow. It's like, dude, you don't know how much that means to us. I want a cheeseburger too, man. Like, I appreciate just those little things like that they kept in.
All right, so should we jump into our newest segment, our favorite scene?
Yes.
Favorite scene, yeah.
And then maybe something we didn't like. Are we doing that as well?
Yeah, so we'll do our favorite scene, and then something, whether it's a scene or just something about the movie we didn't like. Let's start with something negative. We'll end on something positive. So, didn't like about it. Because I checked, this movie's currently sitting at a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. So there's 7% of people who have seen this movie who don't like it. So why the 7%? Oh man, it's hard to think about something that I don't like. Like there's nothing that's like this movie I wouldn't say is perfect, but there's nothing about it that I don't like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One thing that was just kind of weird was like with the villain, we know it's like Obadiah like in the end, but also that guy who was like in the Middle East or whatever. He's just kind of like this weird gothic dude. He's always like frowning and like hidden in the shadows, and it just made me think it was like a little like stereotypical villain kind of thing. He's just in charge and all powerful and always frowning in the background or whatever. So so it's just kind of like I don't know. I mean, we did get like the twist with Obadiah and everything, but maybe not falling back on that stereotypical like idea of a villain, because like as soon as we see him, we all know he's the villain. It's like, okay, like
he's the bad guy. You just know.
It just seemed like a little too much to make a villain out to be that way. I'm just like the way he was the whole time. It made it seem like he was just trying to be like more evil than he was, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of vibe I got from him, which is kind of
So that
weird.
was your least favorite part about the movie, or least favorite scene?
Just something I didn't like about it. Just the villain.
Okay.
Could have been better, I think.
And it is honestly hard to pick something out about this movie that I didn't like, especially watching it a few days ago. Like, it makes it extra hard.
Like trying to remember a dream that you had. Coming. What I didn't like is that they changed. What was his name? It was Tony Stark's best friend.
Oh, Rhodey.
Rhodey. They changed the actor, which I thought like.
that's so dumb.
Yeah, but like looking at the character that came after this movie, how good he became. Like he's a pretty good actor, and like, he was able to fit in. Yeah, how he was able to fit into that character. It's like, why didn't they get him in the first place?
Yeah,
Would've been
it's
really
true.
good.
Like,
They
have
kinda
some continuity.
changed
Like, that's the reason why, like, the Incredible Hulk, that movie's just kind of like off on its own, you know? Because there's almost like no one, like, in the Infinity Saga who are really playing that, you know?
Yeah,
So it's just kind of weird. It makes it disjointed and stuff.
like the only person that was in the Incredible Hulk movie that actually came over to the MCU and stuff was that one general guy.
Yeah, I forget his name.
You know, he's the one that did that papers, the Sokovia Accords. Yeah, he's the one that got all that together.
So, my thing that I did not like about it, don't have any. Kellen took mine, honestly. Like, you took mine, Kellen. That was my thing. It was like, I also would say that, like, it's not. Sure. It's not that I don't. It's not that it's bad storytelling or bad movie making. It's just like my personal feeling about what is made, if that makes sense. Like the quality of the presentation and the creation of it is phenomenal. It's great. I totally understand it. But my acceptance of it is what causes me to dislike it, if that makes any sense. I don't like how Obadiah is so willing to kill Tony Stark. Like, I understand. It's good writing. It's not one of those things where the villain just, like, is bad for bad sake. Like, yeah, he's kind of shallow. I mean, the MCU kind of struggles with that. But, like, for a first villain of a comic book movie, like, he's pretty good. He's just a powerful warlord ironmonger who wants money and really loves money. And then he's had this company for so long, and out of nowhere, this dude's son comes back in and takes the company from him, and then, like, totally changes it and takes all his money. And then so he tries to get him killed, and then that doesn't work. And then he totally ruins his company again. So then he makes sense, but I just don't like it. But I do like the villain. I can't remember that actor's name, but Obadiah. He's such a good villain. Like, my favorite scene. Well, actually, Cade or Kellen, do your other thing you didn't like, and then I'll talk about my
Yeah,
favorite
we'll get
scene.
into favorite scenes. I don't like. What's that doctor's name? Do we remember?
Which one?
Who saved Tony's life in the cave?
Yusef?
I think so. Yeah.
Yusef,
I said it when we were watching. It's like I don't get why he had to like sacrifice himself, because those guys are there was that explosion at the door and those guys are coming down to check it out, and the guy picks up a gun and just like runs down the tunnel shooting out after him, and it's like I don't think he needed to do that. I thought it was like a pointless sacrifice. Like he could have just kind of bunkered down at the door and just shot at him, kept him at bay, while Iron Man like finished like booting up his suit. And then they both could have like lived, instead of like.
I think he does talk about it though. Like when he's dying, his family had died. His plan all along was to kind of sacrifice himself to let Tony live. But I agree. Every time he dies, I'm like, man.
Yeah, he's such a good guy. Like you see, he's really like there for Tony. Like he's actually not a bad guy.
But then at the same time, I feel like his death is what really helps Tony make a change.
True, they might have done that just to seal it, but yeah, it would have been. I would have enjoyed it more if they did it in a different way. Like I said, just him was like, oh, I'm gonna run down the tunnel and just face the whole freaking terrorist group by myself with a gun. It's like it would have been better if he was killed off like in a legit way.
Or like just died just a little different way, where it's like he didn't really have. He's had to really go out of his way just to get himself killed. Is that he was kind of pushed into a corner.
Yeah.
So, but
favorite scene, mine, is when Pepper Potts goes to Tony's office to download all the files, and Obadiah shows up. He does it throughout the movie, but like the key to being a good villain, I swear, is just invading people's personal space. Like So my favorite scene is when Pepper's there, and then Obadiah comes in, and he's like, "I know what you're doing, Pepper," but he doesn't actually know. And then he's like, goes to get the newspaper from her. He's like, "I like the puzzle," and he's like an inch away from her face. Like, just the way he interacts as a villain. He does it many times throughout the movie, but that particular scene, like the eeriness and like creepiness of it, like endears me to him as a villain and makes me appreciate him. Yeah, it's just, like that scene. I'm just like, like the tension. So that's my favorite scene, because there's so many good parts about this movie. That's just one that, like, every time I watch, I'm like, oh, this is just good, like acting and filmmaking and blocking and cinematography and all these things and good storytelling. It's just everything there. It's just good.
I think my favorite scene is when he puts on he sees like, oh gosh, because there's my favorite scene as far as like being epic is when he puts on the suit
For the first time?
for the first time, and it's like all
Cave or like
no, his new suit.
Oh, yeah, the very first suit.
Very first suit up. That was like such a cool scene.
Yeah, I love like the animations of like when he's putting on his suit. That's so cool.
So well done.
Like just the whole.
Practical effects and CGI, just so
Yeah,
well
it's
done.
so cool to see how like all the technology and like the machines like kind of tighten screws or like lock in and fold up around his body. It's just like it's so cool to watch, and the sounds too.
It's just a perfect Iron Man scene. But I'd say my favorite funny scene is when he like, okay, we're gonna do a test run. It's like 10% launch flying capacity, and he's blasting his smacks to top the ceiling. That's probably my favorite, probably humorous scene. But as far as epic, it's when he suits up.
Not bad. I think my favorite scene is when he goes back to that city and just like wrecks everyone's day, because the terrorists are kind of like going through and like killing a bunch of people, and Iron Man just shows up and just starts kicking butt. And like his suit, when the terrorists take like those hostages, and his like suit pops out, and just poof, takes out like the 6 dudes, and like, and he blows up the tank, and the noise when the tank shoots at him. Well, it first knocks him out of the sky, and then he's standing there, and it shoots at him, and he like dodges it, and he's like, "My turn." And that little like pew pew sound from his mist is like pew, and it blows up, and he walks away. That is just like, that's such like what's the word? It's just such a good overall like image and like idea of Iron Man. It seems like super cheesy. As you walk away from the explosion, it's just so cool. Yeah, Iron Man in his new suit, just kicking butt.
I don't know if I would like this one thing about this movie. Watching it this time, especially seeing where this went. Like, so Marvel Studios. I don't know if it was Marvel Studios at the time, but what they were left with. Because they had sold all their popular characters at the time. Like, before Iron Man in the MCU, like, who knew who Iron Man was? Who knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were? Especially them. But, like, Iron Man in that case, like, they were taking unpopular characters, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men, they were all gone. So they took, like, these unpopular characters nobody knew about, Iron Man. Like, in the comics, and you just think about the character, like, such a campy, like, comic booky character, like, there's shrapnel in his chest that's trying to kill his heart. So he has an arc reactor in his chest to stop the shrapnel. Well, then he builds a suit of armor and fights bad guys.
And from the arc reactor
powered
in
from
his chest
in his
saving
chest.
his life.
It's saving his life. And everybody knows who he is. And he's super rich. Like, how comic booky can you get? And, like, they were able to take that character and ground him in a reality, like, in a world that feels so real and so intense and, like, not that way. Like, they're able to do scenes like that where he shoots a missile and blows up a tank and walks away without it feeling like Saturday morning cartoons campy.
So true.
Which is like, it's so impressive that they were able to do that. Like, they took characters that nobody cared about that were totally cheesy and made them a total boss. Made them cool. Yeah.
You look at it now, you think about, like, they're not like these cheesy characters. They're the Avengers. They're dope. And they were able to create that.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I don't know how they, like, yeah, just phenomenal filmmaking all around, but they were able to do that. It's probably my favorite. That's my largest appreciation for this film, is that they were able to make it into something so big out of a character that nobody really knew.
All right, do you
Now
want to
everybody knows Iron Man.
Want to go into our rankings for like? Are we still going to do that on the MCU stuff? In terms of like rent, never watch again, or like.
Oh yeah, I guess we can still do it.
I'm pretty sure we're all confident. Like all the movies
Yeah,
are gonna
I'd
be like
buy
buy.
this movie. I own it already. Yeah, I'll buy it.
I'll buy it again. Just have two.
I'll buy it. We'll buy it and we'll give it away. Let's do that.
Yeah, if you don't have this movie, I would go buy it. It's great.
Yeah.
Or even just like rent it every once in a while. Just it's a good movie to enjoy. Like even though we all know the story, it's a good movie. Like it's fun to watch.
Yeah, every single time, like I'm never disappointed when I watch it. Like sometimes when I watch a movie, I'm like, oh, I really like this movie. I'm gonna go watch it, and I go watch it. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't worth a second watch. Or like that wasn't worth my 2 hours.
Right.
Like yeah, it was good. I still like it, but nah, not as exciting. But this movie
it's a movie you can watch a second time, and you would be annoyed if someone was talking while you're watching it.
yeah, you're like, I'm watching the movie.
Like this is Iron Man, dude.
That's true. Because sometimes like there are those movies where you watch again, and it's just more of like background noise.
Yeah.
If you're like hanging out with a group, like you'll talk through it the whole time. But heck, I don't know how many times I've seen this. Probably like more than 5. Yet when we watched it, like we were all still just like.
Just dead.
Yeah, just like, we gotta watch the movie, man. Alright, so, what's next? Fall In?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about like a meaning or a theme that I picked out from this movie. Besides, let's just make a sweet comic book movie, without being a comic book movie. I don't mean. Did you guys pick any out?
Well, I mean, I kind of touched on this on my, I think it was my 2 cents, or Easter egg, was just like kind of the moral injustice behind like Iron Man, and how it kind of shapes him, you know, because and also I think it just kind of keys into like some truths, like when you got to think about it, it's like, okay, well, here we have a weapons company creating weapons of mass destruction to protect his country, and then he says it too when he introduces the it's called the Javelin, right?
Jericho.
Oh yeah, the Jericho. He talks about how his dad said, it's never enough. You should always have a weapon that you never need to fire or something.
Oh, he's like, my dad.
What is?
Somebody said like the best type of weapon is one
You never have to fire.
He's like, I disagree with that. The best type of weapon is one you only have to fire once.
Yeah, and so I think that's a pretty cool idea, and you can like dig into that where kind of like the moral code behind it is, you know, he's trying to protect the country, but to do so, like you need to create weapons and like things that'll like kill people, you know, and like the movie had the take on it from the reporter, you know, she's all like trying to dig into Tony Stark for, like, oh, you're creating weapons of mass destruction, killing hundreds of people, blah blah blah, and like, how are you helping the world? You know, you're just a warmonger. You do it just for the money, and like you don't care about like the actual lives behind it. And like, you know, Tony, before he doesn't, like the reason why the cave scene's so like critical and like Yusuf dying, I guess, is him realizing like, look, I set out to protect the United States, and like, but thanks to my own efforts and my own company, like, people are dying, and like, he's kind of realizing just like the negative effects that he's had on like the world and everything. So I think it gives him, and it comes up later too, in other MCU movies, like his fight with like his moral code of being a superhero or having super nice weapons and creating super dope technology, but it also opens up to like new dangers and like villains and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was something I kind of got in Iron Man.
All right. So I wrote this down just to, because I didn't want to forget it. I think one thing I realized is the kind of overall story that they're trying to get across, their message was that a question of who really has your back when morals are tested and threats are made. Because you think about like everybody's his friend, and like he has his business partner, he has his best friend in the military, and he has Pepper, and he has Happy, and then all this stuff goes down, and then who really cares about him? Is that this one guy who saved his life, the surgeon, and then Pepper, and then his best friend in the military like came out and like really stepped up and showed that they really cared about him, and then he could find out who he really trusts. And so I feel like that's like kind of a moral of the story that they were trying to get across, that okay, you really think about who are your true friends, who would like, or like who would stab you in the, not saying like don't like just look at all your friends and think which one of you would stab me in the back, but it's more of like ask them, would you be there for me? Like, would you really care if I really was gone for 3 months? Per se, if I was just went missing, would you even care? I think that's kind of a message that I thinking about it right now. I think that's a message that they had, which is a pretty good message though.
Yeah. But I will say another thing is like, because I think a lot of times, particularly in like movie reviews, in like the kind of setting and format that we're doing, a lot of people talk about like, oh, movies are only worthwhile and they're only art if they have a message. And like, not saying that this movie doesn't and that it can't. Like, I totally agree with what both of you guys said, but at the same time, like, this movie is totally worth my time, even though it doesn't necessarily have something that's like a huge message that I really
That like impacts you.
Yeah.
Deeply.
Yeah, like it's still a movie that I enjoy, and it's incredible, and it's art because they were able to make, like we said, the Iron Man we know today. But yeah, solid movie. We all love it. So I'm excited to get started on this this MCU. So we're going through phase 1. So subscribe next week, watching The Incredible Hulk. A first watch for me. I've never watched it.
Oh, really?
No.
I watched it once before.
I know the story, and I've seen like tons of clips from it, but I've never sat down and watched the whole movie. So this will be interesting. So subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Those are linked in the notes. So yeah, it's something that'd be cool too if you guys are on our Instagram or Twitter. Whenever we post something, comment, tweet us, whatever. Questions you have about the movie that we're about to watch, or things you want us to talk about, and if we can fit it in, if it fits our conversation, we definitely will. So
Don't be afraid. We'll give you guys a shout out, and we'll include your requests or comments and recommendations, and we're happy to include you guys. This is we want to share this to you guys so that you can be involved and you can participate. So feel free to participate.
sweet. Ciao, ciao.